To me, the Caribbean is this, the second most diverse place on the planet. So rich in species. Okay, it doesn't have large mammals, but it's got so many other weird and wonderful things. But sadly, it's also the area that's had the highest rate of species loss. It's a very, very small part of the planet, 0.15% of the area, but just look at these statistics. So many extinctions, and about 2/3 or more of these are due to invasive alien species, animals that we have introduced to the region. And these are 3 of the worst culprits, which have driven so many species to extinction. Other problems include the fact that during the colonial period, so much of the natural vegetation was cleared for plantations. Poor old Barbados has only 20 hectares of its vegetation left. We thought the coast was safe, but in recent years there has been all of these areas are being eaten up by developers. So a lot of problems to deal with, and unfortunately not that many people in the region to deal with them. These are small countries, some of them no bigger than towns or villages in the UK, and they simply don't have enough conservationists. These are small governments, small NGOs. They can be really well qualified, really smart, committed people, but not enough to deal with all these problems. But the good news, and there is good news, is that even small projects can make a huge difference here. The great thing about working on islands is that they can respond really quickly to good things as well as to bad. Now, we, over the last 20 years, have been quietly working away in about 15 countries altogether. And it's about time we asked ourselves, well, have we made a difference? In this presentation, I mean, I just realized I can't really talk about everything we've done over the last 20 years, or the soufflés will collapse. So I'm going to focus on 2 countries, Antigua and St. Lucia, but then also touch on just an overall summary of the achievements in the region as a whole. And Antigua is an appropriate place to start. This started very much like almost all our projects in the region with a request for help, a small request for help. And that was to come and look at the world's rarest snake, the Antiguan Racer. Now, this is not a photograph, I hasten to add, but this is an impression of how Columbus would have seen Antigua when he first discovered it. An island full of rich and exotic wildlife, a species found only in this country. Now, during the European settlement period, unfortunately, rats got onto the island and caused havoc in the sugarcane plantations. So the British plantation owners brought mongooses in to control the rats. Maybe they knew a lot about sugarcane, but they didn't know much about wildlife biology. They didn't realize that rats are mostly active at night and mongooses hunt during the daytime. And the mongooses basically went around eating everything else. We thought the Antiguan Racer had gone extinct as well, but in fact, they survived on a very tiny offshore island that didn't have mongooses, but nothing was known about them. So I think it was my second job with FFI. I spent 3 months living on this island, trying to learn about the racers. Nobody at that time from Antigua really wanted to spend that time with me. Most people in Antigua were terrified of snakes, although these are in fact completely harmless. And I found a couple of shocking facts. There were only 50 Antiguan racers left in the whole world, and they were all being literally eaten alive by rats on the island. So clearly the rats had to go. But removing rats from an area is not that easy, and we consulted a pest control company and obviously we could only use poison. That was the only way to get rid of all the rats. So we used a very special rat-specific poison across the whole island, and within 2 weeks, every rat on the island was dead. No native animals were harmed during this process. And as I say, islands can recover really quickly. The racer snake population immediately doubled, but had no more space to increase any further. So since then, we have actually now cleared rats and mongooses from basically a total of 15 islands around Antigua. We just did 3 more last year. And we've started reintroducing Antiguan racers. And the result of which, the Antiguan Racer is no longer the world's rarest snake, but steadily increasing. I could end that project there, because we did what we set out to do. We have saved this very rare animal. But there's a lot more to it than that, because as we started removing rats and mongooses from these offshore islands, suddenly the birds appeared and increased. And now, in fact, these islands have some of the most important, largest bird populations in the region. Turtles also increased. These islands that we've restored are nesting sites for leatherbacks, for hawksbills, for green turtles, and their numbers have tripled since we started restoring these offshore islands. Even the vegetation changed. Now, this I didn't expect, but of course rats are omnivorous. Not only are they eating the animals, but they're eating seeds and roots and shoots. And you can see removing the rats has a profound effect on the vegetation. And because these islands are now so attractive and don't have rats running around everywhere, they attract a lot of people, especially local people. And in fact, when I first started working on this project, there was no environmental education in Antigua, and most Antiguan kids, if you asked them, thought wildlife all live in Africa. But now the islands and their wildlife are part of the school's curriculum at primary and secondary level, and a lot of kids get the chance to go out there and learn about their wildlife. And as a result of this interest in this area, all of this area has been made a protected area. That's about a quarter of Antigua's coastline. Not bad for a little grey snake that nobody liked. Now, I should explain, though, although I think myself and a couple of others from FFI did a lot of the work in the early days, and pretty well all the work today is being done by Antiguan volunteers, people who've got interested in conservation, and many of them have other jobs during the week. They may be a school teacher, there's a delivery van driver, a bank clerk, a tax inspector, but they give up their weekends to come and work on this project. Okay, now let's look at St. Lucia, a different project, but started in a similar way with a request for help. And here we start with a tree. This is the lansand tree, which is unique to the Eastern Caribbean, and it produces a resin that's, I'm told, smells very much like frankincense. And this frankincense is used as incense by more than 60% of St. Lucian people. They're used in the churches, they're used as bush medicine. But the problem is these trees are really fragile, and if you start cutting the trees to collect the resin, they very quickly become infected and die. And this species has in fact disappeared across most of its range because of overexploitation. Therefore, cutting them was banned, but very difficult to enforce. It's very easy for tappers to sneak into the forest and collect the resin. So they asked whether we could help, and I helped the forestry department there design an experiment with 500 lansand trees, tapping them in different ways to see could we extract resin without killing the tree. And the good news is we did find a way. The answer is actually to make a very tiny cut in the tree and then spray the surface with a weak acid. The acid makes the tree produce more resin, but it also helps sterilize the infection and keep the tree healthy. So now the tappers can collect more resin than they did before, but without killing the trees. So tappers are now being licensed to use this method and given their own parts of the forest to manage. And here we have really a win-win, or win-win-win. The tappers are earning money, the people have the incense, and the trees are staying healthy. But again, we go from one species to, in this case, the whole country. We've been asked on the back of the work we've done so far whether we could help the forestry department come up with a new national strategy and management plan for the whole country, all the forests, all the terrestrial biodiversity. We started off, though, with an inventory with the forestry staff to just assess what are their resources at the moment. And incidentally, during the course of this assessment, we found 650 new species, which I think shows just how rich these areas are and how poorly known. And currently, FFI is supporting meetings to complete the strategy, working with the staff, with stakeholders to identify their priorities. I say FFI actually is my colleague here, Mike Appleton, who is facilitating a lot of this process. This new strategy has got people thinking about the forest in a different way. It's not just about preserving the habitat of a parrot, but they're thinking about the resources that these forests provide. And there's a move in the new strategy to develop more tourism in the forests and work with community groups and private companies to develop tours in the forests. And also, I'm pleased to say that the Forestry Department has just formed a new partnership with the Water Authority because they realise that these forests are the watershed that are providing the whole country with the water supply. So these are all very positive moves going forward and a long way from starting with one species. Okay, that's just 2 countries. But what about the rest? We've worked in many other countries as well. What I'm going to do now is just touch on maybe 5 themes, 5 main areas of achievement within this region. The first is, quite simply, I think we can hand on heart say we've saved at least a dozen critically endangered species from extinction, the Antiguan Racer being one, Here is another glorious creature. This is the white Key Iguana from the Bahamas. When we started working with this animal, there was only 150 left, and there was only 10 breeding females, and they weren't reproducing, mainly because of predators on the island, non-native predators. We helped solve that problem, and today there are over 2,000, and a second population is being established. That operation, by the way, cost about £6,000 to save that whole species from extinction. But there are unfortunately many, many, many other species out there that need our help. For example, these two, the pencil cedar, only 30 individuals left, just stuck on the top of this little mountain. And the St. Lucia racer, only 20 individuals left. I just came from St. Lucia where we're developing a 10-year recovery plan for this species. We've also been restoring habitats. I showed you already we've been restoring islands off Antigua. In total, we've actually restored 22 islands around the region now in 5 countries, clearing them mainly of invasive species like the rats and mongooses. The largest one was Dog Island off Anguilla, which was a military-style operation to clear those rats off that island, and incredibly hard work. Anyone, I think, who thinks we come to the Caribbean and have a really fun time sitting on the beach should have really taken part in this one. The main problem was having to clear 44 kilometres of trails across the island, when most of the island is 7-foot-high, thick thorn bushes, and dotted among them were very poisonous trees, and therefore not only were we working in the full sun, but having to wear full chemical suits and gas masks as well. But already we can see the effects. That was just in just 2 years. You can see already the vegetation improving now the rats are gone. And the bird populations have just jumped up. And in fact, we're seeing other species starting to come back to the island that used to be there. So this is really quick. It's not often in conservation we can see just sort of magic transformations so soon. And the good thing is that the people who take part in it, both the foreigners and, of course, the locals, this really encourages us to do more. We can see what difference we've made. We've also had an important role in protecting really important sites, helping to set up new protected areas and improving the management of existing ones. This, for example, is another island which had a rather unusual threat. It was going to be turned, the whole island was going to be turned into a launch pad for rockets. And the CEO assured us that there was nothing there, it wouldn't matter. So we did some surveys of the island just to investigate, and we found globally threatened endemic species. We found one of the biggest seabird populations in the region, and we also, again, found species new to science. As a result of this, the rocket launch plan was scrapped, and the island has been formally protected. It's a reserve and a marine park. Of course, livelihoods is also an important part of FFI's mission and FFI's work. And while we may not be friends of the space program, we have enabled people to benefit in many ways from the projects we do in this region. Sometimes not in ways we actually planned or expected, but for example, this first island we restored to help save the Antiguan Racer snake now generates over $5 million a year just from people paying for boat trips to go and visit the island. There's over 60,000 people a year visiting the island, most of them paying $150 a head, £100 a head. And while unfortunately we don't get to see that money, and that's something I hope we can address one day, what's really great is we've seen a lot of the local people employed through this, including fishermen who have stopped fishing in order to be boat guides and crew, and that's helping to relieve pressure on the fish stocks. And building capacity, of course, it's really important to build capacity in this area, and it's a challenging area to work in because there are so few people. But we have trained and mentored many, many people in the region so far through formal courses, exchange visits, and just mentoring, giving people advice. And as I said before, the volunteers are an incredibly important part of this. There will never be lots of full-time jobs in this region for conservationists. So it's so important to get people who have regular jobs during the week to get involved at weekends and in their holidays. And these can be very skilled and brilliant people to work with. I think after I speak, and as we get the first course, I'm going to be showing a film that Disney made of our work in Antigua. And you'll get to hear from the Antiguans themselves. And again, most of those are people who have, working in the tax office or other offices during the week and give up their time. So what next? Well, I think, to some extent, I hope this presentation shows that we seem to be doing some things right. We're getting some really positive results from the work we're doing here. So we probably ought to continue doing that. But at the same time, we shouldn't be afraid to take up some new opportunities. As far as restoring islands goes, we've seen incredible results from doing this. And, you know, we've restored 22 islands. There are 7,000 islands out there with invasive species and other problems. This is one of the top priorities in the region. It's called Redonda. Really doesn't look very nice, I'm the first to admit. This used to be a beautiful green forested island. But it's a top priority because of its potential for wildlife, and it has a whole lot of species that occur nowhere else in the world. At the moment, though, it's got rats and goats all over it, and that's why it looks like the surface of the moon. But as we've seen from the islands we've restored before, if we remove the rats and goats, the vegetation will come back, and so will the wildlife. That poor little lizard, actually, I think you may have seen on your flyer, is the Redonda tree lizard that no longer has any trees. So I'm sure they'll be very happy if we can get the vegetation back. And also what's, I think, exciting about this is this island actually belongs to Antigua. And through the discussions we've been having with them so far to explore this idea, they're very keen on the idea of basically protecting all of the marine area around this island as well, which will become one of the biggest marine parks in the region. So that's another very exciting part of that project. In terms of new directions, well, you know, there's potential need to engage more with the other industries in this region, the tourism industry, the sailing community, the investment sector, because these all have profound influences over the development of these countries. Now, I have to say the tourism industry has had a generally very negative impact on the region as a whole. But on the other hand, we know that tourists are really fascinated in Caribbean wildlife. And surely we can work together to try and protect and manage these shared assets. So if we summarise then what we've achieved over this last 20 years, saving species from extinction, restoring 22 islands so far. I can't even count the number of new protected areas we've established because every time I try and count, I think of some other ones. Boosting the revenue to local people and training and mentoring a lot of people in the region, both volunteers and professionals. So, next time you're in the Caribbean, whether you're an FFI staff or one of our wonderful supporters of FFI, do spare a thought for some of the locals you've helped. Okay, thank you very much. All right, very whistle-stop tour of the Caribbean. If you would like, I will now show a documentary that was actually made by Disney. Disney are one of our longest supporters of our work in Antigua. It is a Mickey Mouse project. We just play this now. And this, as I say, will show you many of the people we work with, most of whom are volunteers.
There were a couple of persons, literally a couple, who were fascinated by this snake that we were said to have had, but no one has seen it in many, many years. And as a matter of fact, another researcher said it's gone extinct. So they went to the island and lo and behold, they found a snake. These persons now made contact with other researchers, in particular from Fauna and Flora International.
FFI was the first international conservation organisation, founded in 1903. We work to conserve threatened species and habitats worldwide, and we currently work in about 50 countries. In 1995, my organisation was asked to come to Antigua to try and help save the world's rarest snake. A small number were discovered on Great Bird Island, a small island off Antigua. And in a way, it seemed like a second chance to save a species from extinction. A long time ago, the Antiguan Racer used to live all over Antigua and Barbuda, probably numbering in the millions. But then, to help control the rat population, mongooses were introduced to the country, and the Antiguan Racers very quickly died out, and the only place they survived was Great Bird Island.
We reached out to Disney saying, hey, we think we can help bring this snake back. Disney said, we'd like to help.
Once we started the project, we realized that it's very important to have accurate data on every snake because the population is so small.
Oh, she's a nice one.
All right, we actually caught this snake already in 2012.
Okay.
The last time we took her mass, she was 230 grams.
She's actually grown a bit. There were only 50 Antiguan racers when I first came to Antigua. Now, over the years, though, we've been able to help increase the population through the education programs we've been doing, through the restoration projects we've been doing. And the snake populations are now increasing. We've managed to reintroduce them to 3 more little islands off Antigua, and the numbers have climbed from about 50 to around about 1,000.
We moved them up to Green Island, which is another island. We have quite a few other offshore islands, which is in the same area. I assist by moving the snake back and forth, and sometimes I help catch them as well.
As our project's grown, we've been addressing many of the other issues within this whole ecosystem, on the land and in the sea. We're not just working on the snake now, we're working on birds and on turtles and other things. We also restore habitat, so we've restored 13 islands off Antigua, and this is benefiting many, many other species.
I hope that we can restore as many islands as possible so we can have a lot of the islands looking like Great Bird. Without Disney, it would not have been possible. I mean, we have a lot of committed volunteers, but still, we need material, we need equipment, and Disney was able to supply us with that, and we're thankful. Look at over there up in the sky like a kite.
Children are a really, really important part of this program. We like to go around schools showing them the Antiguan races and bringing them out to the islands and teaching them about the snakes and also teaching them about this amazing natural heritage.
You guys with me? Yeah. All right.
What we found is that it's easier to get the kids involved in environmental work because they're young, excited, they want to learn new things, and it's just great getting them to learn about their natural environment. So who's seen the racer before?
Their eyes are staring. Look, those big eyes. They can't blink. They can't close their eyes.
No, because I have no eyelids.
They have no eyelids. So even when they're asleep, their eyes are wide open.
Open, just like fish.
With the floating classroom program, we're basically trying to educate the young children so that they can take those lessons through life and they go home and they tell their parents.
Because we're the caretakers of the planet, it's important that we let future generations realize we have to take care of everything, even a snake.
The razor snake is very, very rare. I think it's the only place you can find it in the world, in Antigua. And to keep that alive, that's something wonderful.